Aloha, I'm Christine Matsuda on behalf of the Mauna Kea observatories. The complex issues surrounding land use and development for astronomy facilities are especially acute in Hawaii, where unsettled land claim issues, questions about appropriate use of culturally significant sites, and decision-making power for governance of Mauna Kea are all under discussion today. Together with my colleagues at the Mauna Kea observatories, we've been engaged in a deep reset for our institutions, better understanding shifting social and political contexts, re-examining longstanding ideas about how community engagement should be planned for and prioritized, and changing the way that we approach proactive, authentic relationship building with members of our community. In this session, my colleague Beth Laychak of CFHT and I will work through some of the critical questions all community relations programs should consider, both when starting out on a new approach and also periodically to evaluate and refine the work. We'll offer examples we're working on in real time with the Mauna Kea observatories and leave you with practical takeaways useful for your own community engagement planning work. So Mary Beth, controversy surrounding TMT and the resulting protests brought about a really important inflection point for us as existing observatories already present in the community. We came to understand that what we thought was maybe not perfect, but working okay, was actually not at all enough for where we were in that time space. So when we did the initial work to identify priority groups in that moment for our community engagement and outreach, how did we do that evaluation? Where did we already have relationships in place?
So we already had relationships in place, really robust ones in the educational sector, particularly K through 12. So the observatories, the Mauna Kea observatories as a collective, we had a real good history of working with local schools. At the same time, we also had good relationships with members of the business community.
And let's talk about some of the analysis of the audiences, the groups of community members that we were not actively in touch with, that we didn't have strong existing relationships with. Who are they?
So, I mentioned that when we talk about schools and K through 12 education, we have two nexuses for astronomy on the Big Island, Waimea and Hilo. And so geographically, the Big Island is a large island. We are missing students and their parents and their families in West Hawaii, the Kona area, and a large swath of the southern part of the area of the island. Because we don't have those working relationships, we're not doing as many classroom visits and not having the reach. When we really looked at it as well, we realized we see the same people over and over again at all of our outreach events. We're impacting the general public who has an interest in astronomy or a curiosity about it. You have a talk and people come to that, but they have to have an interest. We're expecting them to come to us where we are, as opposed to going to them to get the information out there much more broadly.
Yeah, well said. Thank you for that. So let's do an analysis for the sake of this exercise of a few of our many programs to see, as of right now, checking in on our strategy, which groups of the different elements that we've just been discussing are we interacting with as a part of our outreach programming, and who are we missing? So let's start with the Star Party. This is a beloved annual event that you spearhead.
Yeah, so the Waimea Star Party is a star party. It's kind of almost like an open house. And we decided years ago to coordinate that and hold it right after the Waimea Christmas Parade. So geographically, we expect people to come to us. We do get a pretty wide range of people, parade watchers. My favorite story is there was a little boy, he was like 10, and his uncle came up to me and said, I was going to skip, but my nephew told me he's been coming here since he was a kid. And so he needed to attend. So the little boy had attended. We had a trust there. We had a familiarity. He brought his uncle. However, that only worked because they were able to stay because of our geographical distance.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a great example of where we have a really successful event that has a deep reach in a specific community, and where we are not necessarily extending that reach to other demographics that we don't have direct contact with through these kinds of programs would be other neighborhoods where maybe we could be hosting a start party, but that hasn't been a part of our kind of historic paradigm.
Exactly, exactly.
So let's do another one. Let's talk a little bit about Mauna Kea Scholars.
So Mauna Kea Scholars is my baby. It is a program that I run where Hawaii public high school students can apply for observing time on the Mauna Kea observatories. I have 12 schools statewide, one on each island. So when we look at who am I hitting with that one, each school has the ability to do it a little bit differently. So some schools do it as part of their AP class. So there we are self-selected for students who really like STEM. Other ones do it as after school. So those are kids, again, who have an interest in astronomy. So it's a fantastic program. Geographically, it has a large reach. I have a school on each island, but I'm really only interacting with kids that are in some sort of STEM class, have a STEM interest, are forced to take a STEM class, and live in these very specific pockets that I work with.
Yeah, and I'll just add to, in terms of reach and impact, that one of the good things about Mauna Kea Scholars from an awareness standpoint is that it allows us to both get media attention because it's such a unique program and it's a really rare experience that students are able to have. So we work with a lot of journalists through that program. And also it deepens people's level of understanding about what the Mauna Kea observatories are and how they work, because we're able to award telescope time for multiple different telescopes based on the project composition, which is also really useful for us to deepen people's understanding about how we work and what we do. Now that we've walked through an analysis of the specific community groups that we're reaching and not reaching with some of our outreach activities, it's evident to us that there are folks who are not a part of the existing paradigm of community engagement and outreach that we've traditionally thought about. And we know, therefore, that we need to be able to create different kinds of conversations, different kinds of engagement that exist outside of these more formal processes and programs. So when we think about how to create that space, how to engage in those kinds of conversations, what are some of the approaches that we've identified that are going to be really important for the success of that part of the initiative?
Going into all of these conversations, we need to enter humbly with respectful listening. So our community is not monoliths. It's not people who support one thing and then people who oppose another thing. If we look at, the Kia'i, those that oppose the 30-meter telescope, often they're seen as a monolith, that they all have the same goals, the same thoughts, the same feelings. What it comes down to is that there are so many different groups within there. Each has a different motivation. Each individual has a different motivation. And so what we really need to do is go in and listen and talk and gain respect, gain a trust and an understanding, and really think, what commonalities do we have? We focus so much on the big difference, but rarely do we look at all of the little things that we have in common. And those little things that we have in common can become the seeds where we can actually build new programs, new relationships, and figure out ways to work collaboratively for our community, as opposed to this us versus them kind of mentality.
We continually revisit these questions, working to refine and improve as we learn more from the stakeholders we interface with. We're working through our current action plan for stakeholder engagement with the Mauna Kea observatories, moving inward to outward, prioritizing authenticity and integrity. As you turn to your own strategic planning, including the all-important critical evaluation of work in progress, here are a few takeaways to remember. Identify community groups to start with by looking critically at where you have existing relationships and where relationships are currently lacking. Analyze existing outreach activities to identify opportunities to strengthen, pivot, or improve. Initiate brainstorms for new programming that can be designed to fill unmet needs. Consider criteria for selecting community-led initiatives to support with financial, operational, or human resources from your institution. I'm always happy to connect, to brainstorm, to learn, so please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me at christine@maunakeaobservatories.org. Mahalo for your time and for your commitment to being a good partner within your community. Aloha.